So exciting times ahead. As you can see the background, we are going to be talking about Jupiter in the sign of Aries, and there is that lady right on top of my head who is shooting the arrow. So I'm hopeful that you guys are going to be shooting yours as well. Probably we should be shooting towards the sky, right? And initiate to achieve some of the dreams which came up beforehand. So we're going to start in a couple of minutes, but let me just tell you what we are going to be speaking about. Again, a second. Before my laptop dies, let me just put it onto charger. Yes, so we will be speaking, we're going to be covering quite a lot. I think I've got about 40 slides. So we're going to be looking at a little bit what Jupiter actually indicates in our chart, why Jupiter represents the luck in our life. So we're going to be looking at that. We're going to be looking at Jupiter meaning in the sign of Aries from a personal as well as from a mundane perspective. We are going to be looking at the previous Jupiter cycles because, of course, history to a certain extent repeats itself. It doesn't mean that the experiences always are the same, but some of the topics can be actually, you know, indicated by this ingression. So we are going to be looking at that. Also, we're going to be looking at the Jupiter ingress chart into the sign of Aries and what type of aspects it's going to be making. Well, so therefore, we're going to have to talk about Jupiter, who is actually conjuncting 3 asteroids. One of them is going to be Diana, the other one is Heracles, the third one is London. Then we're going to be looking at some of the aspects in that ingress chart, because Mars is going to be conjuncting Nessus, at the same time opposing Moon as well. Then we've got the Venus-Jupiter conjunction going on, Mercury stationing retrograde, Jupiter is being squared by Ceres, Jupiter is actually squaring Lilith also. Jupiter will be conjuncting Mars this month, which is, of course, a very, very important. And then a couple of future transits, which are Jupiter conjunct Chiron, and I also wanted to focus a little bit on Jupiter conjunct Eris. So this is our topic, and the very last topic is we're going to be looking at Jupiter transits in each houses, and I kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what you are meant to be preparing yourself, or how you should be preparing yourself for this Jupiter ingression. So this is our topic for today. So let's get started. Let me share the screen because I kind of prepared slides for you. So I'm going to be disappearing, I think, from the screen, or will I? Maybe not. Yeah, I'm going to stay there. But if you have got a question, please just type it into the Q&A box. I know you will be very excited to, or very eager to learn about your own chart. As I said at the end, I'm going to be talking about some house position, but today I'm not going to be talking about what happens if it connects with one of your planets, because that would be a little bit more on the generic side. Okay, great. And then if you like this webinar, then you can use the donate button on my website if you wish to. No need, just if you want to. Okay, so let's get started. Jupiter in the sign of Aries. Well, this ingression is going to be happening on the 11th of May, and it's going to be there for a good 5 months, to be precise, till the 28th of October, 2022. Then we'll go retrograde. We'll be spending approximately about 6 weeks in the sign of Pisces. We'll be covering there 2 degrees, to be precise, the 28th and the 29th degree. So it's very much about the energetic degree where Jupiter is going to go back. So it will be important to kind of look at this time around, which is actually happening from today onwards, when Jupiter is on energetic degree, what we are expecting between the 6th till the 11th, because those topics can be coming back sometimes in November for us. And then the very last time Jupiter will actually spend a day in the sign of Pisces will be the 19th of December. So the next day it goes into Aries and will be there till the 16th of May. So that's the period of time. Now, you might be aware that Jupiter spends approximately about 1 year in each sign. It has got a 12-year cycle, which I wanted to speak a little bit about, because I think what's kind of forgotten about Jupiter and the Sun, because the Jupiter and the Sun is always, for me, interesting. The reason why is because Sun spends 1 month in a sign, Jupiter spends 1 year in a sign. Jupiter takes approximately about 12 years to make a zodiacal circle. The Sun takes 12 months. So Jupiter, which is kind of like the natural ruler of the 9th house, well, that's the Sun's planetary joy as well. So it will be very interesting to see when the Sun is going to start squaring Jupiter. I think that's going to be one of the possibility when we're going to see what to expect from Jupiter being in the sign of Aries. So watch out for that period. And that's going to be the Cancer season, of course. So it's going to be coming up in July. But also, let me just point out that in July, we also have got the Uranus, North Node, Mars, Urania conjunction too. So that July seems to me quite a big month. But why also it's very interesting, because at the moment, Jupiter is going to be exalting Sun, right? It's entering the Sun's exalted sign. So in a sense, if when Jupiter and the Sun are making very great aspects, especially I would say the trine, as well as something to do with the sextile, then maybe that's when plenty of us will be seeing some positive developments in our life. So just watch out for those dates. Of course, the sextile is going to be happening when the Sun is in the sign of Gemini, and the trine is going to be happening when it is in the sign of Leo. So that's something to do with towards the end of, or the middle of the summer, basically. So exciting times ahead of us. Now, what is Jupiter representing in our chart? So firstly, Jupiter is the planet of confidence. And I would like you to remember this word, because without any type of confidence, unfortunately, you are not going to be having success. You're going to have to be very confident while Jupiter is in the sign of Aries. You're going to have to look at what house it is falling into, because in that area of life, you have to learn to be more confident, to be more open-minded, to be having faith in that area of life that kind of universe is having your back. Now, Jupiter is the god of all gods. Before Uranus got discovered, Jupiter actually ruled the sky. So the sky is the representation of the unknown. So therefore, Jupiter has got this meaning of meaning to life, kind of continuously searching the universe overall. But Jupiter has got the tendency to see and know everything. So that's the planet of knowledge as well. Now, Jupiter is known as the great benefic planet. So it talks about luck and abundance overall. But, you know, we're going to have to be careful with the word luck and abundance, because I think plenty of us are expecting maybe Jupiter in the 2nd house, oh, we're going to be a millionaire, or in the 7th house, we're going to, I don't know, meet the love of our life, especially if we are single. And that's not always the case, because Jupiter always wants us to do a little bit of a spring clean before actually it brings something into the picture. You do need to remember that Jupiter rules 2 signs, which are Sagittarius and Pisces. And those 2 signs are the part of the mental cross. So if you are not there mentally, the mental cross is basically the mutable signs. So Gemini, Virgo, as well as Sagittarius and Pisces. So if you don't have any peace with Mercury, which is going to be stationary in the Ingress chart, then, you know, don't expect Jupiter bringing you plenty of goodies, okay? So what it really talks to us about, that Jupiter can expand if we collected enough data. If you are just sitting at home waiting for the luck to knock on our door, it's never going to happen. So therefore, I never like mentioning about Jupiter that it's all about luck and abundance, because people tend to kind of misunderstand that. Also, Jupiter represents opportunities to expand and grow. But it's only going to be happening if we kind of open the door and we invite the opportunity in. And then it's not enough to invite the opportunity in, we're going to have to grab the opportunity also. So being hopeful with Jupiter is one of the key words. Jupiter is in the sign of Aries, it's going to be more on the masculine expression of Jupiter. So it's going to be bringing a lot more Sagittarius traits into the picture, meaning that Sagittarius is very much about looking into future, kind of like something to do in a sense with your long-term plans, where you imagine yourself in 2 years time, 5 years time, 20 years time, and whether you are hopeful about the future or not. Jupiter kind of is like your vision. So if you have a vision and then you work hard towards it, remember it's a fiery planet, fire and water. That's why it really rules 2 signs, Pisces, which is the water sign. And then of course we've got the fire sign represented by Jupiter, and that's the Sagittarius. But in Aries, that fiery element is going to be a lot more active. So that does talk about initiating things, and that's going to be very important. And then that could bring you growth, abundance. It's an area of life where you need to be confident, where you need to kind of also be riskful, but at the same time being adventurous also. Now, as I mentioned, Jupiter is the planet of luck. And the reason why it is called the planet of luck is because actually he was the son of Saturn. And he was doomed to be eaten by his own father. But what the mom did was actually she saved her own son, and he was raised on honey and milk. And obviously, what would you expect from a son if a father wants to kill you? They want to take revenge. But actually, Jupiter forgiven his own father, and that's where the Piscean element comes into the picture. Forgiveness. Forgave his own father, and he sent him to invent the Italian agriculture. So Saturn became the planet of agriculture. So wherever Jupiter enters, that is something to do with a little bit of a sprinkling, definitely in the sign of Aries, because Aries represents the spring season, right? So in order for us to have those flowers growing and so forth, it's very important that we're going to be watering the plants. Now, watering the plants, Jupiter is a hot and wet planet, as I mentioned before. So when we are talking about giving birth to a baby, what they need is the right temperature, and they need water in the womb. That's why Jupiter has something to do with fertility, or actually it rules babies overall. So it's kind of like nurturing something which you look at as your own baby, in a sense. So if you kind of look after something like you would do with a baby, Jupiter can bring you an element of a luck as well. And of course, if we look at it from the gardening perspective, while, you know, all the products in the garden needs sunshine and water, and that's when actually they can grow. And then, of course, give you the desired product at the end of the summer or in the middle of the summer, wherever it is. So that's why Jupiter represents abundance and growth. That process is extremely important in the sign of Aries. If you are not going to be taking care of, for instance, the self, which is you, Aries is the very first sign, so it kind of represents somehow your physical body, but as well as something to do with the way you portray yourself to the world, then this is not going to be bringing you positive matters. Now, those who have got Jupiter in the sign of Aries natally, it means that you are going to be having a Jupiter return, which typically happens at the age of 12, 24, 36, 48, 60, 72, and if we are lucky enough, age 84 or so. So that's why Jupiter represents the luck. Now, it's worth having a look at what Aries represents so that we can kind of come up with some ideas in the next 1 hour, what Jupiter in the sign of Aries represents. So Aries is the very first sign of the zodiacal circle. So it talks about beginning. Now, what's interesting is that Jupiter is actually moving from Pisces, which is an end of an era, into the end of the year, really, the end of the astrological year, what I mean by that. And moving into the beginning of the season, which is the spring season. This is typically also a period of time when the sun actually crossing the ecliptic, and then it's going north. So this time around, when Jupiter kind of happens almost at the same time, kind of like colliding with the sun's northern hemisphere movement, this could really talk about growth and abundance, in my opinion. So, but Aries is about a fighting spirit. It's the warrior. It's the strategist at the higher manifestation of it. Meaning that I put my heart into something, and then I get myself into competitive matters. Okay, it's very much about restarting the engine. You know, when you are doing the gardening, you're going to have to dig up the garden first, and then you're going to have to plant those seeds. So this Jupiter in Aries is very much about planting the seeds. Jupiter is also the planet of maturation, the process of it by gaining wisdom and knowledge and knowing more about certain type of things. So Jupiter in the sign of Aries can represent learning a little bit more about yourself. Yes, Jupiter also has got negative manifestations also. One of them is the greed. And in the sign of Aries, it could represent that I'm just going to be focusing on myself way too much. It could be a period of time when it's all about me, me, and me. And I kind of forgot about the polarity part of Aries, which is Libra. And if we are not focusing on other people, what could happen is that they are going to be departing from our life. They are going to be actually ignoring us, so they don't want to collaborate with us. So one thing which Aries need to learn, that apart from independency, the connections I make with other people are just equally important. So what type of connections you want to be making, which is gonna actually help your personality or persona grow? And this could be one of the questions which comes up here. Now, it also, Jupiter, which I mentioned before, greed and knowledge. So we can become quite greedy when it comes to getting to know ourselves a little bit more. But as I said, Jupiter rarely works without a good Mercury. And Mercury being stationary in this chart kind of can indicate that I need to stop for a second. I need to analyze the situation, and I need to collect information before actually I head jump into something. Because that's one of the negative manifestations of Aries, jumping into a situation without having any type of strategy. However, Aries is a strategist. Remember, it's about a warrior archetype, meaning that a warrior cannot win the battle if they don't have a plan, if they don't use any type of teamwork. And that's where that Libra element also comes into the picture. Important to remember. So I think Mercury here talks to us about prioritizing and learning about yourself systematically. So Jupiter rules 2 signs, Pisces and Sagittarius. I've already mentioned that. If we look at that, Pisces would be, Aries would be the second sign from Pisces. So therefore, it has got a financial and self-worth type of expression. And from Sagittarius, that would be the 5th sign, which brings in something to do with the self-expression, your true desire, having fun, but also maybe something to do with children, raising children, or self-employment. So one of the prediction I think this will be is that people will be pursuing more of a self-employed status. I already mentioned that with the Neptune-Jupiter conjunction also, for a reason, by the way. So one of the topics this could bring up for on a collective level is that how I can make money from hobbies, pleasure, sex, children, and even sport matters. From an investment point of view, let me just point out that these could be some of the fields which worth investing into, and I think sport will start blooming. I kind of mentioned that I think a year ago, because wherever Jupiter is, that tends to be the sign which kind of picks up from an investment point of view. So you're going to have to think about what Aries represents, what field it represents, and it represents things like engineering, weapon-related industries, but also sport and games too. And that fifth sign from Sagittarius kind of talks to me about, again, something to do with pleasure and hobbies and even applications and so forth. So I kind of feel like these fields will be quite successful. Typically, just to mention from a teaching point of view, with Saturn, typically the opposite sign tends to be struggling. So while Saturn is in the sign of Capricorn, for instance, then the opposite sign is struggling, which is Cancer. And that could talk about, for instance, real estate matters and so forth. So, of course, Saturn at the moment is in the sign of Aquarius. So the Leo department could have struggled quite a lot from investment point of view, which is very much about fun and entertainment industry. And we do know that it struggled quite significantly. While we will see when Saturn moves into the sign of Pisces, Virgo will be struggling quite a lot. So I kind of believe that the workforce is going to be struggling, especially from 2023 March onwards. Probably the peak is going to be sometimes 24, 25 anyway. But we are rushing ahead and we are not here to speak about Saturn. However, I wanted to mention Saturn because you should remember that Saturn is the counterpart of Jupiter. So that's why Jupiter and Saturn cycles very much talk about business opportunities. And we know that they had the conjunction happening in 2020 December. And we also know that Jupiter eventually will be sextiling Saturn, right? From the sign of Aries. So that's going to be an exciting period, and that's going to be happening at the end of the year. So we might need to be revisiting the Saturn-Jupiter cycle a little bit later on this year. So unfortunately, some of the ways how Jupiter in the sign of Aries could be playing out from this house position point of view is that maybe more people start selling their own body to make more money. And I know it might sound a little bit weird and maybe nasty as well, but we all know that the sex industry have been around for a while, pornography, and Jupiter in the sign of Aries works extremely well for it. So that's just something to remember. Fifth house, or the fifth sign, because especially Jupiter is expressing the Sagittarian traits. So that could be talking about things like the education of children will be changing quite significantly. But the fifth house is also something to do with the second from the fourth, money made from properties. So this could also indicate a period of time when people are going to be actually renting out their home, or they have got a spare room, and then, you know, because they want to be making money. So I think money is going to be a very significant topic in the upcoming period of time. Aries, I tend to call it as the unedited version of the self. So this Jupiter really talks about to believe in yourself, but also to be a little bit more authentic and to be yourself and knowing more about your unedited version. Now, I did mention that Libra part is extremely important, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to ignore others, you know, but also we don't need to become a people pleaser. So that's kind of very important. I also call Jupiter in the sign of Aries as the superhero power. And this could be a good thing because sometimes we might feel invincible with this energy, but also it could be a negative side to it as well, because I am so brave, and then I just head jump into something which actually can lead to losses. Remember that second sign from Pisces, so that's why Jupiter here brings in elements of financial aspects also. So you're gonna have to think about it hard. And kind of meaning that if we have got superheroes, then supervillains will be also appearing too, who maybe want to take away our money, maybe wanting to cause some any type of problem. So this could talk about the eighth house topic, which could really mention things around taxation, higher taxes, or food related taxes, which it can actually bring in, or anything around money, which the villains kind of want to take away from us. Also, now, one of the things which I wanted to mention here is that there were some films which appeared during the Jupiter and Aries period, and the reason why I found it funny, because obviously that was a superhero and the super villain type of kind of energy here. So we had Batman, the Toy Story, Peter Pan, and then from a film's point of view, the Killers, the A-Team, the Karate Kid, the Twilight Saga, Night and Day. So the reason why I have highlighted 3 of them was because those actually exactly happened on the day when Jupiter ingressed into the sign of Aries 12 years ago. And if you look at it, all of those are something to do with action and fights. If you remember, the Killers are, oh my days, I don't remember the girl's name. I love that film, but anyway, we don't need to speak about it, but it's very much about an action comedy where we have got this guy getting married to a girl when he's a spy, and 3 years later, the wife gets to know that he's a spy, and then they are running from these people, and then they kill all of them. So there is loads of killing going on here because they were fighting for the survival instinct. And that's really much about Aries, Jupiter in the sign of Aries. Fighting for your own survival instinct, fighting for your own rights. So I kind of believe that this is going to be a topic for us. The A-Team is a very old series, and then they kind of made a film about it. I think it talks about 5 guys as a group, and then they are kind of fighting for justice. They are not necessarily police people. It's a little bit more of a, just a little bit of a social gathering who wants to be fighting for justice. And then we've got the Karate Kid, which is which just started actually, well, not just started, but I think the 4th season is going to be coming out or the 5th season maybe, coming out very shortly. So I kind of can imagine that that's going to be, oh, that's the Cobra Kai, the one I'm referring to. Anyway, sorry about that. But the Cobra Kai is somehow connected to this Karate Kid anyway, right? So I can really imagine that they might be releasing while Jupiter is going to be in the sign of Aries. Maybe not in 5 days. Maybe it's just going to be happening next year, January. But that's very, very possible. So probably from an investment point of view, some of the action films might be a good investment, or anything to do with action which requires action or something to do with fights, a good option for investments. So Jupiter in Aries, some of the question which it brings up for everyone: in what ways can you grow to become a better version of yourself? Jupiter is in growth, Aries as in the self. So how the personality is going to be growing here. With Aries, we always have to be courageous about something. And with Jupiter, we're going to have faith in ourselves. Aries is the sign of starting something new. So are you courageous enough to start something fresh in your life? Typically, you're going to have to look at that planet and the house wherever Jupiter is actually residing for you coming up. It's, as I said, Aries is about having a winning mindset. So do you have the eyes on the prize? Do you know, do you have enough confidence that you can actually win this time around? Also, negative manifestation of Aries could be about dealing with anger management, being very frustrated, kind of wanting to punch the wall. So how are you going to actually learn about the angry side of yourself and how are you going to be dealing with that? That could be another topic Jupiter in Aries brings up. Aries is always about relying on myself by somehow getting others involved as well at the same time. So this could talk about that you are the only person who can create abundance for yourself. Are you aware of that? Are you actually relying on other people way too much? And do you know that you're going to have to start something on your own? This could be a question for everyone. Jupiter, which is about adventure, Aries is about taking risks. So are you ready to sign up for a big challenge in your life? Because the opportunities will be coming. If you kind of disregard the opportunities, I feel like life is going to push you towards some crisis situations, as well as situations where you're going to kind of run into some type of trouble overall. You're going to get signs that you're going to have to sign up for a bigger challenge in your life so that you can grow further. What triggers your anger could be a question you're going to have to think about. And maybe the opposite sign or the opposite house from the position could be one of the anger trigger for you. So maybe if it happens in your 8th house, the anger is coming from the fact that, I don't know, the tax office is after you, or the partner doesn't have money and I'm going to have to, you know, support my partner with a little bit more money and so forth. Does that make you angry somehow? Do you have confidence in yourself? Are you impatient about something? Aries tends to be very impatient. It wants everything immediately. So because Mercury is stationary in that chart, we're going to see this chart very shortly. It's very important that you slow down a little bit and then you collect enough data before you jump into anything. Jupiter's another negative side is that it can become very judgmental, kind of like a know-it-all type planet. So, and Aries is a very quick sign. So this could actually ask you to think about whether you've got the tendency to judge others very quickly. And typically it comes from the fact that you have got quite a high moral code. When Jupiter wants something, it really puts effort and time into that project. But also Jupiter has got very high expectations towards others too, meaning that they also want others to put as much effort in. And that's going to be the Libra part. So, and that could be a trigger for you from an anger point of view as well, that I'm pulling my weight and others are actually not doing that. And then it pisses me off. Aries is a leadership sign. So what area of life you want to kind of become a pioneer or a leader? And maybe it's just somehow a topic in your own life, you know, but I kind of want to be grabbing the grip rather than giving kind of like the power away to others. What's the meaning of life? Why I was born at the first place could be a topic with Jupiter in Aries. Are you the driver in your own car, or you just tend to be sitting in the next chair? Because you are meant to be sitting in behind the wheels, and that's kind of going to be important. And you push the gas pedal as much as possible. So one of the negative ways of Jupiter and Aries is that they might have got the tendency to actually blame others for their own failure. So are you kind of ready to kind of like acknowledging the fact that, you know what, I could have done better. So taking risk is going to be one of the most important part of this transit. Jupiter in Aries is about seeking and growing and improving yourself so that you become confident. It's about working really in your own settings and environment. Again, not necessarily relying on others. It really brings you great leadership abilities. Whether it's, I'm a leading sportsman in my own country, or I'm running a great business, and whatever it is, it's really up to you. Sometimes it can be a little bit on the aggressive and the forceful side. It has got that restless nature, which just wants to get going completely. Whatever Jupiter touches in your chart, sometimes we tend to be overdoing that. So if it's the moon, we have got a tendency maybe to overeat or to over nurture. If it's something to do with maybe Saturn, then I become overly practical. So Jupiter in the sign of Aries wants to be overexpanding. Sometimes it takes on too many challenges and then it cannot really deliver what got promised, or it actually forgets about the personal growth and then just focusing on the challenges ahead or the road ahead, but we don't necessarily learn much about ourselves. Jupiter and Aries both are very adventurous energies. So we might be craving for adventure. We might be craving for kind of like being on the battlefield. We might be craving for somehow exploring the unknown. Because Jupiter, which rules the sky, let's be honest, it's all about not knowing what's right above us, right? We've only discovered a small portion of the sky. So this might be, from a mundane perspective, is going to be a topic where there is going to be a lot more discovery going on. From the impatient side of Aries, we can easily get bored. We start something and then we kind of never finish that. So we should be mindful about this trait. It makes rash and impulsive decisions. It's about acting now and then thinking later. And then we don't necessarily look at the possible consequences. It's really much about pushing the competition aside and then kind of like carving the path right ahead of you, which I think it's a great characteristics. But am I going to be hurting someone on the way? Or am I going to be pushing them aside in a very careful way? That could be also something to consider. Jupiter in Aries is about being straight up front about something. It's very honest, very blunt to a certain extent, and frank as well. It's very easy to hurt other people's feelings. Remember, the opposite sign is Libra. So it's about hurting to a certain extent your relationships or your immediate connections. It's not just necessarily about a romantic partnership. It could be just people around us, how we come across. This is going to be something to pay attention to. Jupiter in the sign of Aries. Now, plenty of people forget one thing about Aries, which is about the mental capacity. So the soldier, as I said before, it needs to think before, it is a thinker because they're going to have to come up with a plan, right? So there is somehow the mind related to Aries as well, the strategy, which can really flourish while Jupiter is there. We can come up with plenty of new ideas. What I said was important is that you kind of find the ground and then you're not going to be kind of scattered, because Jupiter in Aries can be scattered. Or you might feel that I'm on such a mission and then, no one can stop me. I just need to get to the end of it. Jupiter in Aries tends to be ahead of its own time, and sometimes they are not the most understood people either. Now, just Albert Einstein came to my mind because he's got some Aries energies. And he was actually told at an early age, basically when he was young, that he's retarded. Well, that's not how we remember, right? That he is a retarded person. He was just way ahead of his own time, and people didn't necessarily understand him. And sometimes this could happen to Jupiter in the sign of Aries. Doesn't necessarily get understood by others. From the mundane perspective, if we actually be going to there, I wanted to look at, let me just shift these two around. Here you go. The previous cycle. So if you want to understand your Jupiter in the sign of Aries, I would like you to look at the previous cycles a little bit. So to help you, I put the last 3 cycles up for you, which happened between 2010 June and September, then 2011 January till June. That was the very last period of time. And then we've got 1999 February till June, and then 99 October till 2000 February. So you might want to be looking at, or if you are the older generation, then basically between 87 March till 88 March. And that was kind of like a straight period. Jupiter, of course, went retrograde during that time too, but it did not make any sign changes. This time around, Jupiter will be, as I said, in the sign of Aries till October 28th. And then from January till May 16th, it's going to be in the sign of Aries. So again, we've got a little bit of a break between 2 signs. Now, if you start looking at your own charts, I would like you to remember what was going on in your life around those period of time. To mention my own personal example, Aries is my 2nd house from a whole sign house point of view. Jupiter natally is placed in my 10th house, okay? So you're always going to have to look at your natal position of that Jupiter, not just what Jupiter rules in your natal chart, but also where it comes from, because it carries kind of like the energy around the zodiacal circle. So what exactly mean by that is oh, finally, I fixed my Sirius program, so I've got it back, which I'm very happy about. So what I exactly mean by that, let me just bring up the chart so I can kind of show you. Jupiter is in the 10th house. So yes, Jupiter rules the 1st and the 10th house in my case, but it might be actually not ruling any of the houses for you. So whatever Jupiter does, because it's in the 10th house, it always brings an element of a career path with it, okay? And I recommend calculating from your natal Jupiter towards the transiting Jupiter, how many signs away it is. So in my case, it's going to be the 5th sign. So something to do with that 5th energy is going to be very important, okay? So it's kind of like Jupiter is transiting your 5th house. This is how you should be imagining that. And then it's going to somehow get colored with that 2nd house meta as well at the same time, because in my case, it's in the 2nd house. So I hope that makes sense. But of course, so that's the kind of like the accidental meaning of Jupiter. And the main meaning of your Jupiter is the houses, what it rules. So kind of like Jupiter always has got 3 meanings, apart from the essential meanings, okay? So in my case, it's something to do with career, and then it's going into the 5th sign from the career house. So how the 2 relates, and you're gonna have to kind of combine that, okay? So that's just a little bit of a technical kind of teaching so that you know how to work with your own energy. And so looking at those previous periods, for instance, from a personal point of view, 2000 June, September, I got promoted at work and I became kind of like a business manager of a restaurant. So therefore it brought me pay rise as well, okay? So that really fits the 10th house and 2nd house energy. 2011 January till 2021, 11 June. In 2011 May, I got again promoted and I got transferred to a different restaurant, which also came with a pay rise. So that period of time, it was all about pay rise for me. Now in 1999 February to 1999 June, well, that's the period of time. Guess what happened? I started working for the same company I worked in 2010 anyway. And I started making money. There was no other option because I had to be making money so that I could be paying my schools. And then we've got the 1999 October 2000 and February. I went full-time with my work in 2000 February because that was the time when my my mom died, and I needed to support myself. So somehow the 10th house, which is actually representing the mother figure, came together somehow with that second house energy, which is about earning money. So, and because it's the 5th from the 10th, I think it was kind of like the end of my childhood era as well, how I would kind of interpret that. So I hope that helps you to kind of give you a little bit of a clue how you should be looking at your own chart. Because unfortunately, I was not able to put this into the material because I would need to look at everyone's chart. So from a mundane perspective, and between 87 and 88, I don't remember what, oh, I do remember what happened. My mom left us, and then that's why I was staying with my grandma, which happened around the age of 3, 4. Well, my grandma says it was 3, my mom says it was age of 4. Maybe the 4 would suit a lot better actually, because it would kind of make sense a little bit more. Okay, so, but from a mundane perspective, what did these things brought us? So I put a couple of things up for you there. We had a war going on in Afghanistan. US actually pulled out from Iraq and the war ended. Now here, there is something I would like to mention, because there are these news going on whether the war is kind of going to be ending now between Russia and Ukraine. But other channels are saying that it's not gonna end. That's not true. So there is a little bit of a confusion going on around this, surely. So one of the things which is interesting, that there was a war in Afghanistan. So that would kind of confirm that it's gonna go further. Also, I put something up there. 2011, Mars was also with Jupiter in the sign of Aries too. And of course, there was the war zone in Afghanistan. But what I did was I erected a chart, a horary question, whether the war is going to be ending between Russia and Ukraine. And what I saw was that both teams were extremely strong. I wish I had the chart right in front of me. Unfortunately, I don't have it. I should have got it. Oh yeah, I was looking at Jupiter cycles here. Where are we? Here. So Jupiter put Mercury into detriment, and Mercury was putting Jupiter also into detriment, which kind of indicates that, you know, the negotiations between the two countries might not be going too well because they are not accepting each other's offer. But Jupiter and Mercury, Jupiter represented Russia and Mercury was representing Ukraine. But those two had a separating aspect going on between them too. And the separation exactly happens on the 9th, 10th of May. And that's when Jupiter moves into the sign of Aries. So whether the war ends or not, I think we should be expecting in the next 5 weeks, and I'm not going to say that it's exactly on the 10th. I would say 5 weeks more, because why 5 weeks? Because Jupiter was on 28 degree, Mercury was on 3 degree on top of my head in that chart. And the aspect between Jupiter and Mercury breaks exactly around 8.5 degrees. So that would give us approximately about 3.5, 4-week period. So we should be seeing some type of development, either escalation or a stop or a little bit of a pause, but something is going to be happening around that war type of thing. So just something. Another thing which I kind of found fascinating looking back a little bit in the history department was that Bill Clinton was impeached. Excuse me. Also, Osama bin Laden was murdered. So political matters were really kind of on the horizon. So I'm just wondering if we should be expecting something similar. Do I actually believe that someone is going to get murdered? Maybe not, but once Jupiter and Mars are going to be having a conjunction, it's going to become exact on 28th or 29th of May. We're going to speak about that separately. You know, there could be a little bit of a hot zone there, so we're going to have to be careful for about 6 weeks. There could be something going on around that time, but at least something around impeachment, or I can imagine that people are going to get frustrated and they're going to say that, you know what, we had enough, and you know, and I'm referring to Russia or Ukraine, but something around these topics I can kind of imagine. Anyway, Instagram was introduced, so some technological advancements there. China launched its second moon expedition, which is very much about getting to know the sky a little bit better. So that's Jupiterian type of energy anyway. Jupiter, which rules something to do with the big things. I found it very interesting that Dubai's largest building was built, which is still the largest building in the world, and that's 163 floor high. And the previous one was in maybe Taipei on top of my head, and that's only 107 floor tall. So kind of like Jupiter in Aries is a little bit like the Guinness records. So we should be also expecting something, some type of records being broken. Sorry, something is scratching my voice. If you just give me a second to drink. I don't want to be coughing too much. So I'll be back in just 1 minute. Sorry about that. So Guinness records, I can really imagine something around that too. But also we had the SpaceX launch happening. Chile had the 6th biggest ever recorded earthquake, and it was an 8.8 one, so that's quite a large one. Unfortunately, hopefully the history is not going to repeat itself, but you know, Jupiter, which is about spread, and Aries, which is about fire. So we might be expecting some natural disaster around fire-related matters, or something to do with dryness also. So this could be a very dry summer at certain periods or certain countries. And I'm kind of expecting certain flood in other countries too. So can you guys hear me? Because someone says they can't hear me. You can, so it must be Stephanie. I just went for a minute break so that I can drink. Maybe that was the problem. Also, there was the Occupy the Wall Street protests, which I found a little bit interesting because I think it's somehow related to Jupiter in Aries. Aries is about fighting for my own right, fighting for your individuality. And the right element really comes in from the Libra element, because sometimes what Aries does is that it kind of feels like that I'm getting ignored by others, so I need to ignite something. It's kind of like when you're trying to turn the key in the car, that's kind of like an Aries moment there. And then when it doesn't happen, it frustrates me. So if others are not listening to me, others are not necessarily kind of appreciating what I do, then this Jupiter in Aries gets very frustrated. And then that's why some of the protests could be coming into the picture, which is, by the way, a very Uranian type of energy, by the way. But remember that Uranus and Mars will be in conjunction in July. Jupiter will be still in the sign of Aries. So therefore, and then there's going to be a kind of like a sign-based sextile, semi-sextile going on between them two. So there is an element of a possibility that some demonstrations could be happening. And also what I kind of found interesting was the Black Lives Matter movement got seeded, which really grew itself out by 2013. And I kind of see that a little bit more the Piscean energy, which really talks about majorities and minorities overall. But what I found interesting is that it kind of started spreading. And again, it was about fighting for your own rights. So these are some of the mundane happenings, what was going on. And yes, so we kind of need to be aware of those, because the history can repeat itself in not necessarily in a very similar way, but it could. So from a mundane perspective, I think the youth will be a focal point. And actually, if someone goes on strike, that could be something to do with the youth, maybe because of education system. It's very possible that kids might start having sex at an earlier age in the next 12 years, because this is a social planet. Jupiter is a social planet. So it talks about a kind of like a social movement overall. So it's very possible that kids are gonna kind of become a parent a lot quicker. So it's something you might want to get kind of cautious about. Hopefully it's gonna bring an element of an education about the sexuality and the intercourse at schools. Maybe something to do with the moral code type of class, which might get introduced in the next 12 years. And they might start planting the seed this year also. Unfortunately, one thing which I forgot to put on the mundane list, but there were quite loads of attacks, especially gun attacks against schools back in 2011. So it's very possible that unfortunately there is going to be some type of attack towards schools. Now, whether it's from parents and they don't agree with the education system somehow, let's hope it's more that rather than any type of gun attacks or, you know, kidnapping and all these type of things. But unfortunately, that's a possibility also. Unfortunately, Aries represents anything to do with knife, shooting, war, even police, military related things. These could unfortunately get heightened. So maybe the police will have to be dealing with loads of or a lot more knife and shooting situations, or maybe there is going to be a fight back against police matters, and maybe the military needs to be getting involved in some places. Unfortunately, that's possible. I think Aries represents the war. So, and one of the reasons why I don't necessarily like this chart this time around, because as I said, in 2011, we had Mars and Jupiter also in the sign of Aries, but Venus wasn't in the sign of Aries. And this time around, we do have got Venus also here. And Venus and Jupiter is making a wide conjunction, but it is a conjunction. And my problem with that Venus and Mars are the representation of war. So that's why I'm not so sure whether, you know, the war between Ukraine and Russia would end, or maybe there is a possibility that maybe Iraq will be getting back into the picture. We can actually have a look at the Jupiter and Mars conjunction when it's going to be falling on the world map. I forgot to check that, but please someone remind me a little bit later on when we get to the Jupiter and Mars conjunction, because we can have a look at what countries it affects the most. I think it could also indicate that more countries will be prepared or start buying some type of guns, or there is going to be a lot more training happening, or maybe actually the military is going to expand by inviting people into trainings, or maybe they're going to be increasing the salary and then more people choose to become a soldier, these type of things. I think there is growth in game industry as well as martial arts related matters. Now, the last time also in 1999, 2000, I'm not too sure when. If someone can Google that, I would very much appreciate that. But there was this Mortal Kombat game, which became very popular. And I think it was around 1998, 1999. Yeah, I think that was one of the first martial art related kind of game as well. So it would be interesting if it maybe happened sometimes in 1998 at the end of the year, 1999, beginning of the year. I think it could be not a coincidence, really. Also, it could be about something to do with kind of like a huge marketing plan by bigger companies, kind of trying to be the first, because Jupiter, alongside with Neptune, it's something to do with marketing, spreading the word. So I think there is going to be huge kind of competition going on between big businesses. I'm very much expecting that. I think the public transport will be a lot faster because Aries rules engineering and Jupiter is kind of like increasing the speed, right? So something around that I'm expecting. I can imagine some type of religions who might be fighting or fight for religious reasons. It could talk about identity matters, fighting for identity matters. So it could really talk about bisexuality, gay, I'm a woman, I'm a man, I've got my rights, and all those type of things. Unfortunately, very possible. But also there is a need to learn more about relationships. And I think the divorce rate might be going up in the upcoming 1 year. So relationship, I think, might get to a point in many of our lives where it's kind of like a decision making. Can we collaborate? Can we not collaborate? And it's not just your romantic relationships, but maybe your business associations also. And I also believe that more and more people will be running out of money as well. And that's why there's going to be more competition going on, where people are fighting for their survival instinct. And I kind of believe that Jupiter somehow represents the benefits. So more people might be on benefits, or more people are applying for benefits, or there is going to be a little bit more shadiness going on around benefits too. In the meantime, I saw that you guys looked it up, and then it was between 1995, 1998, 1992, 1997. So that was not necessarily the, but Jupiter in Pisces could really talk about video games anyway. But anyway, I kind of can imagine that somehow the martial art business is gonna grow. Let me just share my personal experience. Yesterday, I went to I went to a kickbox trainer because I did learn Muay Thai for a few months. And then now I moved to another city in Turkey, and I wanted to find another teacher. And I met this MMA martial art teacher, mixed martial art, basically. So he does Muay Thai, kickbox, Taekwondo, all these type of things. And I was sitting with him for 45 minutes trying to find suitable dates because of him. I'm very flexible. I said, I can schedule my clients according to your, according to your schedule. So you tell me when. And I wanted 3 or 4 sessions. And he could only give me 2 sessions a week because he's fully booked, apparently. So, and then it kind of came to my mind, oh, wow, Jupiter in the sign of Aries, that could really indicate that their schedule becomes a lot more kind of filled up. So worth having a look. Aries, which really represents your head and your ego. And then Jupiter, whatever it touches, it magnifies it and inflates it. So unfortunately, those supervillain people, which I was talking about, could really indicate more snobbish and big-headed people appearing in our life. So just be very mindful about that. Jupiter represents rain, Aries represents dryness. So I kind of feel like it could indicate more rain at dry and sunny places, and more of a heat at rainy places. So again, from a weather condition point of view, unfortunately, there might be some, again, changes visible. Aries represents entrepreneurship. Jupiter is the planet of law. So we should be expecting maybe just some changes around how you can become an entrepreneur, unfortunately. This aspect can be very selfish. So we're gonna see probably this year more selfishness happening as well at the same time. One of the learnings of Jupiter in the sign of Aries is that we're gonna have to stay a little bit more humble. We're gonna have to stay true to our own truth as well. I'm not suggesting just to kind of go with the flow and listen to others. But the Aries and the Libra axis is very much about kind of like a seesaw, right? So yesterday I was watching this film. I don't remember the title. I kind of never remember the title, but it was a CIA agent, and his partner was a 9-year-old girl. Who takes him to school and do presentation, and they have fun together. And the guy falls in love with the daughter's mom anyway. And then and they were at the playground, and there were 5 kids sitting on one end of the seesaw, and this big muscly guy was sitting on the other hand, and actually they were playing. Well, obviously, because that's when there was a balance. And therefore, Aries and Libra axis is one of the hardest one, because we're gonna have to always look at how much we need to be walking on tiptoes, how to balance things out. And I think this is one of the most controversial axes also. I mean, don't get me wrong, all the axes are quite controversial, but Aries and Libra, the cardinal ones, is a little bit of a challenge. And Aries and Libra always represents the world axis. Okay, so whenever a planet crosses through 0 degree of Aries, and maybe here I kind of can show you a point like that. So here is the Aries point, and then here is the that would be the Libra point. So you imagine that Jupiter is actually running through here, this point here. You can see that cross. So that's what we call as the world axis, okay? And that is a very prominent energy. So if I want to show this to you in a different way, You can see I was looking at the periods of Jupiter in previous matters, but I show you if we are here. If someone has got solar fire, then one of the ways you can do that, the exact chart, 2022, search, and then you just want to be clicking on the entry date. So this is going to be the entry date. Yeah, and then you receive that chart. Now, if you want to get that ephemeris, what I kind of was showing you, then you do exactly the same thing. You enter the date of birth here, 10 May 2022. And maybe I'm not going to be looking at 9 years, but maybe I'm just going to be looking at, I don't know, a 5-year period. And we just leave it on progression. We're going to leave it on declinations and 30 degree. And then you get kind of this chart. Now, one of the things which you see here is that Jupiter, can you see it's right there around that 0 degree? And what you're going to see there, that the progress moon is really going to trigger that in 2024. So something, whenever a progress moon goes around, comes around, even though Jupiter won't be there, but it's going to be triggering the Jupiterian point. So something between, well, to be precise, it looks to me that 2024, June 4th, around that period of time, that's going to be an important period for the Jupiterian meta. So I just want you to kind of remember that date, because progress moon is going to kind of shed light, a shadow light onto that Jupiter. Okay, so I hope that makes sense what I was kind of trying to show you. Okay, so selfishness. Now, here is the ingression chart, by the way. So we came up with that. Now, of course, it really depends on where you are erecting the chart. So this is erected for New York. The one I've put on the slides actually was erected for Universal Time, so London, UK time. So let's just have a look at this chart a little bit more, because you're going to see that it's quite exciting. And I want to kind of break that down for you. So you see that Jupiter is on 0 degree of Aries, right? In London's chart, well, it's falling into the 4th house. So this is something to do with the land and the royal family overall. What's going to get triggered here? Definitely the royal family is important, because the MC ruler is also Mars, which is going to be there in the 4th house. So somehow the royal family is in the spotlight in the next 1 year. But anyway, so we see that Jupiter is actually conjuncting here, widely though, but it's conjuncting Venus. We see that, hold on. Anyway, you just have to believe me. You can see that the dispositor of Jupiter, Mars, conjuncts Neptune. But also there is on 17 degree a asteroid called Nessus, which we're going to touch base on, but it's about abuse. So something to do with abuse of power is going to be a topic here. And then you can see that the Mars is being opposed also by Moon. So these are some of the biggest features of this Jupiter ingression into the sign of Aries. Now, the dispositor's position always going to talk to us about what type of events we should be expecting. And one thing for sure, because Mars is in the sign of Pisces, in what ways we are self-sabotaging ourselves? Are we actually confused about where our life is heading? In what ways do you feel abused? Are you tired and getting fed up on certain type of things in your life? And that's why you want to be starting something fresh. Who is actually abusing you? And the abuse actually comes from that Mars and Nessus conjunction overall. Nessus is about abuse. Sometimes it's actually talking about sexual abuse as well. Sometimes that Mars in the sign of Pisces is very much about trying to swim against the tide. It does bring in some type of sexual element as well, because Pisces is a very sexual sign, by the way. Alongside with Virgo, Pisces are one of those sexual signs, and of course, Scorpio. So sometimes it really could bring in some deviant sexuality topics as well. So somehow sex is going to be a huge topic, especially with the Nessus alongside Mars. But we call Mars in the sign of Pisces as the spiritual warrior. So it's fighting for forgiveness, it's fighting for peace, it's fighting for kind of like a spiritual right, really, to be existing in a fair way. That's the very highest manifestation of Pisces. And the reason being is because Venus is exalted here. So Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Venus at the same time. And Mars in Pisces wants to kind of create peace in life. And the question could be that how are you going to initiate that peace overall? Now, Mars, apart from Nessus, which is very important here, but it's connecting to another 3 asteroids. One of them is Diana, the other one is Heracles, and then also we've got another one which is called London. So UK is somehow going to be on the hot zone, I guess, in the next 1 year. But I want to be speaking about Diana and Heracles a little bit more. So Diana was the daughter of Jupiter. Diana actually represents independence and freedom. She was someone who never wanted to get married. Actually, she was begging her own father not to give her away. She wanted to be released from her own duties. We're talking about Jupiter, of course, as the father. So Diana, in your personal chart, really talks about how you are, you're not wanting to be committing to something. So remember that Jupiter in Aries is about initiating something, but Mars is connecting to Diana, which is about not wanting to commit. Right? So there is a confusion going on. Shall I commit to something or shall I not commit to something? By the way, some astrologers believe Diana is the symbol of bisexuality. So that's why I kind of believe that sexuality might be coming to the horizon. But eventually what happened was that Diana ended up getting married to someone. She fell in love with a guy who became the father of her children. And but she never felt free enough. She kind of always felt constricted by the idea of a marriage, and she really suffered from it. Oh, by the way, she got married to a guy who spent 90% of his life sleeping. So somehow there is an element of maintaining her freedom, and kind of like it was a guy who woke up once a month, they had plenty of fun together, and then for 29, 30 days, the guy was sleeping again. So she was kind of like free like a bird, but she never cheated on that guy, by the way. So it really talks about freedom and independence, just like the Aries sign. And the fact that Mars connects to Diana, I find it very interesting that there is kind of like this spiritual war going on for independence. A strong Diana placement in your chart can also show someone who does not necessarily want to have a child, for instance. Or it could also talk about someone who prefers to be single. So a little bit of kind of like a spinster type of energy. By the way, Diana, the asteroid, was discovered in 1863. So it's not something which is new, by the way. And she was discovered on 20 degrees of Aries, very nearby to Eris, the another asteroid which we are going to be talking about. She is basically the sister outsider. She was kind of disregarded by everyone. So I find it very, very interesting. Oh, by the way, if you don't know, oh, sorry, I forgot to put it there. I wanted to, but I forgot. Diana's astrological number is 78, if you want to be looking at where it is in your natal chart. So all you do is that you go on astro.com and then you're going to be entering Diana into the additional box. Come on. And then maybe you bring up your own chart or whatever chart you want to be looking at. I'll bring up mine and we can have a look at where Diana is. And here you scroll down here and then manually enter 78. And then you're going to get Diana's position in your chart. Okay, and then you can see that Diana is actually sitting there. It's very close to my Pallas Athene, by the way. So it really talks about someone who likes being single. Well, do I like being single? Definitely, I fight for my independence, and I've kind of never been in a proper relationship. So I'm guessing Diana plays a significant role in my chart. Anyway, the other important asteroid which I wanted to speak about is Heracles, and its astrological number is 5143. Going back to Diana, I also find it interesting that Princess Diana was also called Diana, right? And she had plenty of relationship problems. By the way, Diana asteroid didn't get her name from it. As I said, she was discovered in 1863. Now, I'm not suggesting that every Diana is going to be having relationship problems, by the way. So anyway, Heracles, its astrological number is 5143. So you can enter that exactly the same way like I showed you. Now look at its astrology sign. I find it very interesting that it exactly looks like Jupiter, but it has got two of the crosses. Now, the story behind Heracles is that he was the god of strength. Also, he is called as Hera's glory. And Heracles talks about sexual appetite. Now, apparently, he impregnated at least 50 women. But the story behind him is that Zeus was very fascinated by a immortal woman, and then he disguised himself as her husband, and he got her pregnant. And the wife of Zeus, Jupiter, actually was very jealous, and then she wanted to kill Heracles, but somehow he always survived these attempts, really. And eventually, Hera was tricked into nurturing him, and Hera ended up raising him. However, she didn't know that who she was raising, because obviously if she knew, then probably she would have killed him. And so it talks about, to a certain extent, in what ways we are abandoned by our parents, but also it talks about how we might be struggling with something in life, or how you get destroyed by your own parents. It can actually talk about foster parenting also. And another thing is that he impregnated at least 50 women, which we kind of know about. So he is the god of sexual desire. He was extremely getting into everyone's pants. So another sexual energy, which is actually coming into the picture with Mars. So somehow the sex industry looks to me that it's a huge topic. And whether it's going to be because pornography is going to be growing significantly, by the way, which I wouldn't be shocked about by the South Node being in the sign of Scorpio, or something to do with sexual scandals, but we should be expecting something around these topics. Another interesting fact about Heracles or Hercules is that he moves between Sun and Jupiter. Sun is very much about the kind of like the shiniest moment of your life, the shiniest version of yourself. And Jupiter is something to do with the higher self of yourself. And Hercules is the one which is actually getting a lot closer to the sun than Venus also. So he is that asteroid who has got the ability to get very close by to the sun. And the very next time when it's going to get very close, on top of my head, is 2023. Anyway, so, but Hercules or Heracles, which is very much about kind of like your sexual appetite and sexual needs, I thought it was going to be maybe important to look at the hierarchy of the needs a little bit. And I think it really relates to Jupiter. You can see that the foundation is the psychological needs, which are your basic needs, basically. It talks about food, water, warm, rest, kind of having a mommy around you who is going to look after you. And the basic needs also, there is the safety need there, which is about security and safety. So this is, in my opinion, really talks about the lunar and the Venusian needs. And then we've got the psychological needs, which very much about belonging and to someone or being loved by others. And whether it's intimate relationship or friendship, but the relationship becomes important. And also somehow the fact that I'm appreciated by others as well. And that's going to be the self-esteem needs. And this is a Venus and Mars need in astrology. And we have got the self-fulfillment needs, which is very difficult to achieve, by the way, but that would be the self-actualization when you reach your full potential, including your creative activities. And some of us tend to believe that Heracles or Hercules represents the ability to kind of move between these needs. And I think Jupiter in Aries is really much talking about how you're gonna go back to the basic needs to kind of make an element of a growth here in your psychological and safety needs, so that we can grow into that loving and caring relationship, which might lead to some self-fulfillment needs, and you're gonna be achieving your highest potential. So that's why I wanted to look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs a little bit more, because I think if you kind of look at in your natal chart, where is the issue? Is that with my moon? Is that with Venus? Is that with Mars? Is that with Jupiter? Or is that with Saturn out of those 5 tiers? And you might be looking at your own Heracles in the chart as well, because Heracles is going to kind of show you in the chart where there might be some element of a lack, I wanted to say. So 5143. So to give you an example here, I'm going to just put that down there. 5143. Right, so I can see that my Heracles is something to do with the first house, and it's conjuncting Venus, right? So my needs here somehow got broken, maybe here, the safety and the security parts, or maybe something to do with the belonging and love needs. And there could be some element of an issue there. So you might want to be looking at your Heracles, the tightest aspect to it, and it kind of gives you an idea of what you need to be working on with this Jupiter in the sign of Aries, because it could really talk about coming to terms with these ideas. I kind of hope it makes sense what I was trying to talk about here. Do we have any questions around this? It's not opening in. Okay, so I can see that Stephanie had some issues. But unfortunately, I can't help in the meantime. So Great. Okay, so let's just move forward a little bit. So what we saw in that not discovery chart, sorry, it's the Ingress chart, is that Moon was opposing Mars. This could really talk about agitated people. Moon represents the people in the chart. It could talk about, and with Mars, which is about the bottled up anger in the sign of Pisces, it's kind of like silent anger, which is eating you inside out. And the opposition is about projecting your kind of anger onto others. I try to take my anger out on others in a silent way. It's not about shouting, it's about making them feel bad about themselves. So this could be one of the topics, how you might feel by, for instance, politicians or by, you know, hierarchy people overall, because Jupiter is something to do with that hierarchy overall. And that could be a topic to mention here. Moon and Mars opposition really talks about social restlessness. We can talk about Moon and Mars opposition quite a lot. I don't want to. Another thing which you saw in that chart is that Venus and Jupiter are in a wide conjunction. They are 8 degrees apart. But it really talks about, as with Venus, which is about love, Aries is about myself. So how are you going to be loving yourself? Are you going to be doing things which you actually truly enjoy doing? Or are you going to sell your soul to others? As I have been telling you a few times, but even this Venus and Jupiter conjunction reinforces the need to focus on collaboration, negotiation, and relationship with others, and then to kind of create a peace with that Mars in, how is it called, Pisces. Now, one of the predictions I made in February, on February 26, I think, that I saw the war between Ukraine and Russia to finish sometimes within about 16 to 18 weeks time. That would be something to do with the beginning of June. So that will really connect with the Mars and Jupiter conjunction. So I'm hoping that 16, 18 weeks period, which I kind of was talking about, is kind of correlate with that. We will see. So Venus and Jupiter, it's really about the two benefic planets are getting together. I think Venus is benefiting from Jupiter this time around because Jupiter has got triplicity rulership here. In the sign of Aries, and obviously it's a fire sign where Jupiter kind of like spending time. So Venus is, you might want to be looking at, okay, what Venus rules in my chart, because you can actually benefit from those areas. It also could talk about a little bit focusing on your values. Do I give up my values in the relationship department, or am I too self-focused? How I'm going to be kind of bringing a balance between those two? That could be a topic here you're going to have to work on. Another very interesting is that Mercury is stationing retrograde. It's a stationary planet. Remember what was going on with Mercury stationing when there was the elections. Well, the elections got delayed pretty significantly. My question, if I'm not mistaken, there is elections coming up in France, and there is election coming up in Australia as well very shortly. I am just wondering if there is going to be delays going on, maybe post office related matters, maybe, I don't know, the counting is going to take ages, or just something we should be expecting around these elections. I don't think it's going to be that easy. But remember that stationing, which is kind of about stepping for a moment to kind of think, and then after I'm going to be revisiting some of the topics. So this is really talking about we're going to have to go back to the beginnings to kind of collect a little bit more information so that we are not going to be making the same mistakes. This Mercury stationing retrograde, let me just point out that it's going to get activated in December. Why? Because Mars is going to be here. It's going to get activated, to be precise, a few times between August and March. But also what I found very interesting is that the reason why I put down December there, because Mars will be out of bound from November till next year, May. So while Mars is going to be walking through the Gemini retrograde type of points, Mars is going to be out of bound. And when Mars goes out of bound, and it's going to be out of bound for 7, 8 months, that's a long time. That's a very restless Mars. That's a fighting Mars. That's a criminal Mars. Or it's very kind of motivated to get things going. And we know that the Mars retrograde is going to be happening in the US chart in the 7th house, in the sign of Gemini. And this is going to be an out-of-bound Mars as well, till approximately in that 7th house till March. So might be a little bit of a peace coming up, but yeah, I think it's just temporary. And I also found it interesting that the Saturn-Uranus square almost going to be peaking in October, November. And that's pretty much on top of my head. I would need to check to be precise, but that would be pretty much when Mars kind of goes out of bound. So I find it very interesting. And Uranus and Saturn is about knocking things down. It's very much about kind of cutting the chains. So yeah, interesting period of time I think we are looking ahead. Also, I didn't put a series on the chart, but just take it. Jupiter and Ceres are actually squaring each other. Ceres does talk about anger management, food supply, food prices, benefits, and kind of looking at what you have and what you don't have in your pantry. So this could bring in a period of time when maybe, I don't know, the chicken is so expensive now that I'm not going to buy chicken. Or the flour is, you know, it's cheap today and then the price is going to be double from tomorrow. So I'm rushing to the shop to buy flowers, or, you know, whatever it is. Or Gemini, Ceres is still in the sign of Gemini, by the way. So we've got a out of sign square, but they are very close by just 1 degree apart, because Ceres is on 29 degree. So this could really talk about the transportation of the food. And therefore, of course, it definitely brings in the oil prices again. So food related matters, agricultural matters can be an issue. And imagine if there is a very hot summer. Obviously, some of those tomatoes and potatoes will be struggling big time. So therefore, this could bring in some food supply issues. Jupiter is also squaring Lilith, Black Moon Lilith. And Lilith is our darker side. So I think this aspect is prompting you to learn more about your darker side. It really talks about intense emotion, to be open to get in touch with that forgotten darker side of yourself. But it also talks about forgetting about the past, not living in the past, to kind of forgive yourself about the past. It's kind of like taming your physical reaction to certain type of things. So it's how you deal with your anger. Black Moon Lilith is very much about pessimism. So So are you pessimistic? Or Jupiter says you should be optimistic. And then it's going to get tested with a square. Lilith is about liberating yourself from any type of pain. So there is loads of self-growth really going on. Whatever we're kind of looking at, it's very much about how you nurture yourself, how you kind of liberate yourself from past life mistakes, embracing your dark side, but not staying in the dark. Black Moon Lilith is a Plutonian type of character. So if you know what Pluto is, then imagine that Jupiter and Pluto are actually squaring each other. And then it gives you a little bit more clues about how to go with Jupiter and Lilith square. Last but not least, it's not happening in the ingression chart, but Jupiter conjunct Mars. Now, it's very similar to what I've described about Jupiter in Aries. So it's about getting things going. It's about dreaming big and wanting to win. It's kind of like going for a, I don't know, a football competition, and I'm going to make sure that I'm going to be, you know, scoring 5 times. It's about being extremely optimistic. So I'm not going to go on about this aspect, but I put a couple of dates up for you there, which might be worth your examination, because those are the last time when Jupiter was conjuncting Mars. And you might want to be looking at what was going on. By the way, this aspect happens approximately 2.5 years. So this is a little bit more of a shorter cycle. But I'll urge you to kind of look back in history a little bit and then have a look at what to expect. What we can do, though, I didn't put that up there, but very briefly, maybe you can aspect, we can actually look at Jupiter and Mars conjunction when it exactly you know, happens and where it is happening and then how it is playing out. So the conjunct, oh, sorry about that, I forgot to replace. Here you go. And then it becomes exact. So you can see it happening on 29th, and then you can see that this is going to be happening on 3 degrees, okay, which is actually bringing in some Venusian territory. And what I find interesting in this chart is that Venus is about 0 degree. So I think it's really talking about initiating of making money. I think the financial market will be impacted by this significantly. So I'm going to keep a very close eye on the 29th, around the 29th of May, what we expect. Maybe it's a launch date with Venus on 0 degree of a new financial product or whatever it is, right? But it's worth having a look at if we have got any type of aspects going on. Not really. We can have a look at the Sabian symbols. We can have a look at the asteroids, what we've got there. I'm not going to go into that now as much in depth. But clearly, I also see that Moon and Uranus is in a very tight conjunction in that moment too. And Mercury is retrograde. So it's very, very interesting. Michelle, go ahead. You've got a question. Michelle, you need to unmute yourself and then you can speak. No question, I guess, then because you lowered your hand. Great. So going back to our slides, and then we're going to get onto the personal stuff very shortly, because I'm not going to repeat myself about Jupiter conjuncting Mars, but this is definitely a marker because it happens in the sign of Aries. And on the very same day, as you could see, Venus just left Aries and then it went into the sign of Taurus, a lot more peaceful Venus. So that's why I'm kind of hoping that from 29th of May, within about 6 weeks time, it's going to bring an element of a peace, at least a temporary peace, with this war zone, what is actually going on at the moment. Sorry, your pocket question. Okay, your pocket wants to ask a question. That's good. Okay, great. So some of the future transits. Wow, I planned this webinar to be 2 hours. Well, it's going to take a lot longer. Okay, at least 1 more hour. Future transits. What we should be focusing quite a lot on, and this is not going to be happening this year, but Jupiter will be making a conjunction to Chiron. Now, I want to show something about Chiron. Oh, I should have put the reference here. What book is it from? Melanie's book about Chiron cycles, just to reference it. But you can see that what's interesting about the cycle of Chiron, that it spends the most amount of time in the sign of Aries. It has got a 50-year cycle, and it spends almost 9 years in Aries, 8 years in Pisces, 7 years in Taurus, and so forth. And it spends the least amount of time in the sign of Libra. So on one hand, it kind of makes sense to me, because working on the self, that kind of bringing the wounds up from our, you know, soul is very, very important. Okay. So I kind of feel like it's a very, very noticeable or important, and Jupiter will be actually magnifying all these wounds within us. So if we put some of the keywords together, then Jupiter talks about growth and Chiron talks about pain. If you are not healing yourself, the pain within you can grow significantly. Jupiter Chiron might talk about the need to find a guru for yourself who is going to kind of get you out of your shadow side. Chiron, unfortunately, typically talks about sickness. So this could talk about, you know, not necessarily COVID situation, but maybe a skin-related matter or skin rash-related things, for instance. Or any type of Aries matters, which is, for instance, the head, you know, like spot on the head or whatever Aries kind of represents, okay? It could talk about a new blood-related problems, you know, or maybe the healing of blood-related matters, which could be coming up on the horizon with this Jupiter conjunct Chiron. But also, Chiron is the planet of corrections, karmic corrections, really, and usually it happens in a painful way. So what I mean by karmic correction is that, for instance, I don't know, the food prices went out of the, you know, the window, and we need to be correcting that, and they do that. And for instance, what they doing now in my country, that they put a price lock on certain types of food, such as chicken, agricultural products, because it be, and also petrol. Because what the country wants to kind of avoid is that everyone is going to put so much margin on it, and then people are going to be not going to be able to buy it. So there is a price lock going on at the moment till 1st of July, and it's been going on, I think, since January already. So, and that's the type of Chiron energy. We make some type of painful things, which is obviously affecting the small enterprises, right? Because they might be selling that chicken on loss. There is a huge chicken issue going on in my country now. Apparently, there is not enough chicken, or the chicken prices become so, the chicken costs as much as beef, and or very close by. So there is some chicken problems going on. I don't know what's going on in other countries though. So this could talk about such things, for instance. But Chiron is something to do with your soul wounds, or just wounds, and Jupiter is spreading that. So it could talk about pandemic related matters, but also just overall, you know, something spiritual wounds which are spreading. Chiron represents suffering. So unfortunately, suffering can be spreading. How much money we've got, how much not we've got. Chiron is the victimhood. So becoming a victim of something can be a topic with this. But how are you going to be healing your confidence? I think that's the positive manifestation of Jupiter and Chiron. It's about learning to laugh at yourself. Yes, learning to laugh at yourself, because laughter is a healing. And it might be asking you, why am I not able to laugh at myself? Why am I just laughing at others? It could talk about, yeah, kind of the pocket is getting empty. We take things too seriously. Or we become a little bit hypocritical, and then we are smiling when we are hurted at the same time. Or we need to be dealing with our faith because we are not faithful towards something. We are way too fixated on our opinion. We are impatient and we really want to be finding our life mission. And Chiron is also related to life mission anyway. It could really talk about suffering communities and suffering cultures overall, or it could talk about what type of foreign agreements countries are going to be making. It could talk about visa issues. It could talk about the truth are coming out and it's going to be quite painful. And we kind of feel abandoned as well. We kind of feel that gods are not necessarily helping us anymore. So I think this aspect will be very significant, especially because Jupiter will be meeting Chiron 3 times. So this is a very important question, and therefore I built in Jupiter and Chiron into your house breakdowns as well, so that you can know, or you know what area of life you're going to have to do some healing. And that's where there is no more important time than ever that with Jupiter in the sign of Aries, we do spring clean. Aries, spring, Chiron, clean. And Jupiter will be conjuncting Eris, which is the asteroid of discord. Eris has been in the sign of Aries forever. So it was there in 2011 too. Mars was there, Jupiter was there also. The only thing which wasn't there was Venus, like this time around. And Aries, basically what happened there is that she didn't get invited to a wedding. So therefore she just threw in a golden apple, and the brides and the pretty women kind of started arguing over it. And then Jupiter was meant to be choosing the prettiest woman. He refused to, so he gave the decision making, the possibility to make a decision to Paris, a young guy. Now we've got, how interesting that this time around we've got Jupiter, who was meant to be making a decision, and we've got Mars, who is actually that young male character, Paris. So this mythology, how is that going to relate to your life, or how is that going to kind of repeat itself in the society? That could be quite a big topic. But some of the themes with Aries, feeling left out, kind of like the uninvited person, kind of like someone who puts up a fight because of inequality, unfairness, injustice, or someone who causes a little bit of a chaos. Aries, by the way, does represent social media. So how the social media is going to kind of grow, or how there is going to be discord going on social media. I think this is going to refer here to Twitter. And I did make a post on my Facebook about the Twitter chart. So if someone is interested, go on AstroViktor on Facebook and then check it out. But you can see Pluto opposing the rising sign there by the degree. So I found it very interesting. But also Aries is about reacting to situations, about authority energies. It's not necessarily the most violent. It's kind of like whispering matters into other people's ears, or it's raising awareness about her own truth, really. But it wants to be picking a fight. It's about speaking out. It's about do something about all those injustice. And it's kind of like not necessarily thinking about what the consequences are going to be. And Jupiter will be magnifying all these. So someone won't be getting invited to a party, which is going to cause an element of a discord, really. So it's kind of like, imagine that, I don't know, for instance, US is having a, I don't know, a discussion with, I don't know, China, and maybe Russia was expecting to get invited, but Russia feels left out. Okay, just an example. It doesn't need to be these countries, but I kind of find this interesting. Okay, so, and also don't forget that Jupiter now triggers the Pluto Aries ongoing square, which is still going on till the end of the year. So I kind of find it interesting that this is going to be happening. You know, the Pluto Aries, sorry, the Pluto Jupiter square is gonna take place on sometimes in January, on top of my head, 2023. But I did think about making also a kind of like a free webinar about the Pluto Jupiter cycles, because this time around we've got the sextile going on and the square is coming up also. And of course that Aries is actually involved in this matter. And Aries also talks about revenge. So this is a difficult position here. Yeah, this is a very difficult position here. Okay, so this is what I kind of wanted to share with you. Yeah, this is what I kind of wanted to share with you in regards to the you know, in regards to the normal material. And then I wanted to focus a little bit more on Jupiter in the sign of houses. So do we have any questions so far? So I can see we've got some comments here. No problem, Wendy. See you soon. Yes, Melanie Reinhardt. Yeah. Okay, great. No questions. So let's just get into Nessus is the asteroid of abuse, typically sexual abuse, but also power abuse. And typically in relationship departments really talks about how the power is given away to others, but also it represents your deepest shadow side as well, which we tend to be inheriting. It's kind of like, we can call it as the pre-existing condition of the human birth. It's kind of like the wounds brought from the cosmic womb. So but typically this is something to do with trauma, rape, abuse, suicide, violent acts, mass exterminations, how you respond to certain type of traumas. This is typical topics to Nessus, which obviously Mars conjunct. So relationship, Mars and Diana and Nessus for me, and Heracles really talks about sexual relationship, cheatings, lies, betrayal, what we should be healing from, especially in the next upcoming 1 year. Okay, so guys, let's move on to Jupiter in the houses. So let's start with Aries rising sign. So Aries rising sign is going to be having Jupiter transiting the first house. And the first house is about your identity, what decisions you make. Also, it represents your approach to life or what type of impressions you kind of make to others. So next week, I will be actually holding a webinar. Let me just do a little bit of a self-promotion about your chart ruler and the ascendant, and we're going to look at a deep dive about how to analyze your chart ruler in a little bit better way. Because also I believe that the chart ruler is something to do with the soul guide. So Jupiter is going to become the soul guide for the rising sign of Aries. And this could really talk about in what ways you want to be changing your life. What changes do you want to make in your chart life? And do you have the courage for that? Now, the first house is always the hardest to interpret, by the way, because it can really talk about anything, really. It's kind of like the unedited version of yourself, which has got some type of desires. But some of the topics it could bring here is that maybe I want to start a course. Maybe I want to start a life, a new life in a different country. So are you open up to new possibilities? Are you courageous enough to get out there? Do you have confidence issues, which kind of needs to be looked at? And how are you going to be overcoming those confidence issues? Do you have anger management issues, or is anyone violating your own power? Do you tend to get into volatile situations which needs a resolution? That might be a topic. Or actually, are you trying to hold yourself back in some ways? And Jupiter doesn't want you to hold yourself back. Actually, it wants you to put your faith into yourself. And you are the only one who can bring luck to into your life. And then if you grab the opportunities, this could be one of the bestest year of your life, really. Also, remember that Jupiter rules the 9th and the 12th house, more important than 9th this time around, because Jupiter is expressing in fiery expression, and which is very much about relocation, as well as studies, faith. So those topics are really coming up here, but ruling your 12th house, so there is a need to let go of some of your fears, kind of like sweeping out your kind of like memory container a little bit. And because it's the first house, which represents the body, and Chiron is here too, it's going to be very important that you also heal your body on a physical level too. It might be about going to the gym, kind of letting the anger or the steam out of your body, or it might be about losing weight, or whatever ways you want to be healing, but something needs to be changed around your approach to life on a physical level as well. It might be about that you, first house, meeting a guru, Jupiter, who is going to set you free from your fears, Jupiter ruling your 12th house, who is going to change your belief system, 9th house, who is going to teach you positivity in this life. And you need those type of people now, because they might be boosting your confidence. It might be about that I just want to be changing my personal style, and I'm going to be bold about it, and I'm going to have red hair or purple hair, or, you know, you might want to be looking at what color Jupiter rules. I think it rules purple, but I'm not 100% confident about that though. So you might want to be looking that up. Okay. Well, Jupiter rules the sky, so it might also represent some bluish color as well. But anyway, it doesn't matter. You know, it's about you painting your own picture. So how do I want to look like? And that could be a very significant topic here. It might be about that you want to start fresh when it comes to your career, and therefore you're going to take courses. You're going to study something. So it's about initiating. Taurus rising sign. Jupiter is going to be happening in your 12th house. And it's not Jupiter's favorite placement. However, it doesn't mean that we can't have goodies about it. One thing is that 12th house, from a traditional perspective, is a vocational house, because the 10th, 11th, and the 12th are something to do with the vocational kind of quadrant of the chart. So sometimes it's about working on a project and kind of initiating that project, planting the seeds so that it can bloom once Jupiter goes into the sign of Taurus, which is the second part of 2023, and 2024, the beginning of the first 6-7 months of the year. So that's one thing it could really talk about, kind of like a job change. But in order for you to do that, Jupiter tells you in the 12th house that if you feel paralyzed, if you feel weak about something, if you are feeling kind of like you've got the inner demons around your initiating something, then unfortunately you're gonna get held back. Remember, Taurus rising sign, that you've got the kind of like the tendency to get stuck in safety matters. Now, Jupiter wants you to get out of your comfort zone, and Uranus is Uranus is conjuncting your rising sign, especially if your rising sign is somewhere between 13 to 20 degrees. Then this Jupiter is going to be a big change, a game changer for you, because it's going to be important that you get out of that comfort zone. It's about finding an inner strength so that you can achieve your long-term goals. It's about getting in touch with your hidden talents. 12th house rules hidden talents. And it's about maybe letting the world know about your hidden talents. It's about maybe someone investing into your own talents. Maybe you have got a great business idea, because Jupiter rules your 11th house, which is the house of investors. So getting investors, someone who is going to be investing into your project, and then kind of like a collaboration part, which it really could talk about here. It could talk about things like, I wanted to go for a spiritual retreat. I want to have a spiritual business. I want to be building on my inner world as well. So somehow more spiritual experiences, but in a physical form. Watch out for expenditures this year, because Jupiter rules your 8th house. So other people's money. 12th house is scam. So watch out for who wants to drag you into any type of shady financial matters. Watch out for your spending habits as well, because it can really get increased in the upcoming 1 year. But also this could be giving you the desire to actually make more money. And in what ways you want to actually initiate that. It might be a very old talent you used to do before, and then you just have to bring that back. It might be talking about spending problems you're going to have to watch out for, or it might be about just looking at your earning potentials a little bit, or your earning blockages. In what ways am I blocking myself to make more money? And it could really talk about contemplating 12th house a little bit more about the fears around making money, because mainly your money houses are involved here. Of course, the 8th and the 12th, especially those who also have got Jupiter in the sign of Gemini. Definitely it's going to be, or people who have got the Jupiter in the sign of Virgo. Those natally, I mean, those people definitely going to be focusing quite a lot on financial matters in the next 1 year. Okay, Gemini, Jupiter will be transiting your 11th house, which is really much about your social circle, kind of like your visibility, your friends, the benefactors, but also it talks about political involvement also, and money made from your work. So maybe you're gonna have to start thinking about how to market yourself, Jupiter, on social media, 11th house, so that you can have a better salary, 11th house. So it kind of bring in some abundance into your life. But also it could talk about how to find supporters, how to build your own tribe overall, or just supporters, benefactors in your life who is going to be promoting or supporting your long-term goals. So this could be really talking about some type of collaboration overall. I think 11th house, which represents your future, Jupiter represents your future. Aries represents the adventure on that road to a futuristic, to a futuristic world. So overall, this is really talking about turning your life around. And you might have had issues, most probably since about 2019. And then now it's going to be about starting fresh and then building a new future for yourself. But do not just be hopeful and optimistic about something that the fried chicken is going to fly in through your window. It's going to be very important that you reach out for that fried chicken because someone else is going to grab it. So don't just dream about things, make sure there is some action going on behind. You're going to have to take your life into your own hands. And maybe it's by connecting to a guru, connecting to a friend, listening to your friends to a certain extent, especially those people who have got Jupiter in the sign of Libra or in the 7th house. Those are going to be important to listen to others. Now, Jupiter does rule your 7th and the 10th house, so I think it's new career opportunity here, new business associations, associations which will work in the long run. Also, it could be a collaboration with your husband or your wife overall. But with Jupiter, we always do a little bit of a spring clean. Who needs to be kind of released from your life? They need to go. Is there anyone in your life who are judging you? You listen to them, you take that on board, and then if you completely disagree with that, then you just tell them, I don't want you to call me anymore. It's just not working. This could talk about political and legal matters, Jupiter ruling your 7th. So some of you might be experiencing some court cases going on. Jupiter can promise you a little bit of a win, or at least fight for your own win, at least. It's about being clear about your own vision. It's about wanting to have a pay rise. I'm going to go and speak to my boss about it. It's about even competition can be coming up, for instance, at your workplace. There are 2 finalists who is going to get chosen for the position. And how are you going to knock the competition down so that you are going to be the chosen one? And last but not least, I would like to mention that I think Jupiter in the 11th also talks to you about making friends with your enemies too. Jupiter rules the 7th, which is the house of enemies. Kind of like we say that you should keep your enemies close to your chest. And because you never know how you're going to benefit from them. Benefit 11th house, right? So these are going to be some of the biggest topics of the 11th house. Also, let me just point out that Jupiter's favorite placement is actually the 11th house by planetary joy. So Gemini rising this year might be blessed, especially the Gemini risings who have got their Jupiter in the natally in the 3rd house, 7th house, 9th house, or 1st house. I think for those, this could be a real blessing. Cancer rising. So Jupiter is going through your 10th house, which is about your social status, fame, status quo, profession, but also something to do with parenting too. And to a certain extent, it does talk about official changes in your life. So for instance, I get married. So Jupiter here really, because it rules your sixth house, it could really talk about being rewarded for one of the projects you were working for, or at least being recognized for your efforts at the workplace. Probably there is going to be an increased desire to be noticed by others, especially by your superiors. That, you know what, I want to be praised, I want to be, you know, given feedback. It's kind of like a performance review type of energy here. And this could give you a good performance review overall. It could really talk about wanting to start a new job. So maybe 10th, 11th of May, you should be writing up your CV, and you should use the Jupiter and Mars conjunction to actually get your CV sent out. Venus is going to be in a very good position. Jupiter and Mars is also kind of a good combo altogether. So initiating a new career opportunity. It could be especially talking about talking to those who have got their midheaven somewhere between 0 to about 8 degrees. That could be quite exciting for those. This could, so writing up your CV, sending that out, it might be a good idea for you. It could also talk about just getting transferred to a different department at work. Or if you have got an existing business, in what ways am I going to promote that business? How am I going to make the business more visibility? I don't know, do I need Christmas lights on the windows? Do I need to put posters on the waste bin? You know, or I need to order a big poster for the bus station, or directional signs. You know, in what ways you are going to be promoting yourself, because it's going to be very crucial. If you don't do anything marketing related in regards to your own business, don't expect any type of growth. Let me just put it out there. It's important for you. The last time Jupiter transited my 10th house was 2019, when I started working with Lada. And, you know, that I chose a brilliant day to promote myself, which was January 20 something, or some, I can't remember the exact date, but I chose that because Jupiter was bang on my path of fortune, and the midheaven conjunction, it was on the midpoint. So, you know, it's about making sure that you do something about it. So expanding the business is possible, promoting your business is possible, and probably think outside of the box as well could be important. Jupiter does rule your 6th and the 9th house. The 6th is a little bit more important here. So maybe you have been blocked a little bit because of health issues in the past, or you are desiring a change in your work environment, or maybe you are fed up of working for others. Or maybe you just want to be having a little bit more of a balanced lifestyle, but really Jupiter in the 10th house wants you to kind of go and grab opportunities, whatever is coming through. But 6th house as the house of assistance, it might be talking about the need to hire an assistant so that you can be a lot more productive. And this could bring up some medical issues around your mom also, especially if Jupiter comes from your 3rd, 6th, 8th, or 12th house, then it could indicate medical issues around your mom too. Leo rising sign. So Jupiter is going through your 9th house and ruling your 5th and 8th. So Jupiter's another favorite placement is the 9th house, because naturally Jupiter feels good here. The 9th house is the preparation to be famous. And that's why 10th house is the fame, 9th house is the house one before the 10th. So it really talks about the preparation for the fame. But in order for us to be famous, we're going to have to learn something about ourselves. And obviously, Leo rising, you are all about fame and wanting to shine. So you're going to have to learn a little bit about why you haven't achieved that yet. And how am I going to be making some type of tweaks around it? Maybe because I'm going to be getting in touch with my spirituality a little bit more. Maybe I'm just going to be having a relocation a relocation, and then I'm going to be boosting my best planetary energies. I want to start a relocation course, by the way, in at the end of June. It's going to be 8 weeks, and we're going to be looking at about 4 or 5 relocation techniques. So I hope to see you there. But again, it's about 9th house is finding meaning to life, or something to do with life purpose. So you might be actually tapping into that, knowing that, you know, I want to be heading this way. Maybe we're going to be just traveling quite a lot, not necessarily relocating, but definitely this is the house of faith. So there is an importance here to believe in yourself. And Chiron is here too, right? So why do you believe that you are not a star? And I think this is going to be very emphasized, especially for those Leos whose rising sign is between 14 to 18 degree. But it could be typically true for the entire Leo meta. And I think the career change of kind of learning, it's going to be more about people who have got their midheaven between 0 to 6 degree. Those are going to be feeling the most. And I know people are going to be commenting, what about if I have got this and there? You just go with the general description because you're going to feel that. Okay, and so Jupiter ruling your 5th house. Some of you will become grandparents with Jupiter in the 9th house. Some of you might need to be giving a helping hand to their children, and typically this would talk about some financial help. But also it might be about me wanting to be self-employed, and then I need to be learning about how it works. It might be about the fact that you want to be having your own child, but maybe some of your belief systems are holding you back. Maybe it's about publishing your creative project. 5th house rules books, 9th house rules publishing. So releasing some creative project could be a great period of time for Leo, which might bring you a little bit of a public stage. Virgo rising sign, it's going to be happening in your 8th house, which is about shared resources, fear, intimacy, relationship matters, typically crisis situations in the relationship, by the way, and how we are going to be transforming. So this is the year, Virgo, when you need to be making changes in your life. This is about letting go of some of your fears, letting go of an element of a perfectionism. Whatever is annoying the crap out of you, then it needs to be released, basically. Facing the inner demons, going deep, and then healing yourself. And definitely with Chiron, it's some type of trauma which you need to transform into something positive. Maybe it's actually telling you that you are a teacher archetype at the end of the day. You just need to believe in yourself. Virgo, Virgo, which is the Madonna whore and virgin syndrome. So it does talk about something to do with sexuality, and the 8th house also. So it might be healing some of your sexual intimacy matters in your relationship. And maybe it's looking at why you are not trusting yourself, or why you are not trusting your partner, or why am I not actually supporting my partner when it comes to their financials, because maybe there is a little bit of a struggle there. You might be expecting inheritance or tax return, something which is actually going to be boosting your financials. I look at the 8th house as a service industry, which is very much about how much money I charge to others, because this is my clients' money as well. And maybe the wounds are around that you don't know how much money to charge people because you don't know your own self-worth. These are typically the questions here. Jupiter rules your 4th house and 7th. So building a family could be a topic which comes up, but I'm afraid. And it might be because my partner doesn't have a stable job, they are not making enough money, or I might want to get a loan so that we can build a house together with my partner. But from a very psychological and transcendental point of view, this is about going back to your ancestry line and then healing bits and bobs there. Maybe by family constellation therapy, maybe by regression or whatever it is. But use your Virgo rising sign, which is very analytical, right? So analyzing patterns in your life could be crucial. And also, maybe you want to be making some peace with some of your relatives or family members. That could be another topic here. Jupiter rules your 4th house, which is your inner foundation. So do I feel good in my own skin? That could be another topic to kind of talk about. Maybe it's about you being cheated on by your partner, and then you get to know, or it happened in the past, and then you kind of have to be, you know, kind of overcoming that issue. That could be also in the case. And also this could talk about something around investments as well. Now, I think your investments can turn out pretty well. Why I say that is because Virgo rising, it means that you have got Jupiter in the 8th house and Venus is in the sign of Taurus at the ingression chart. So overall, and Venus rules your money department. So some blessing could be coming around investments if you have any, but it might be about you thinking to invest. And maybe this could be a great period of time. Anonymous attendees have a question. I love anonymous attendees. Does the Jupiter return start once Jupiter conjuncts the exact degree of your natal Jupiter, or as soon as Jupiter enters the new house? Well, the Jupiter return chart is exactly, I would be pulling that up when Jupiter returns to its natal position. But any planet ingressing into a new sign, already communicating with those planets in the sign, kind of like giving directions. Okay, from now on, it's kind of like imagine that the boss walks into the door and all of a sudden everyone is kind of, you know, standing there straight, imitating that they are working before they were having coffee and having a laughter. So this is the type of transit. It starts communicating, it's giving out the tasks, but your Jupiter return is really, you should be erecting that for the Jupiter return moment, because that's going to tell you what to expect in the next 12 years. And any type of transits to that is going to talk to you about when you have got confidence issues and how you can grow, not grow, and all those type of things. So I hope that makes sense. Okay, Libra rising. So we've got 6 more signs left. Jupiter is actually transiting your 7th house. I spoke about Libra quite a lot, so I don't want to be sure to speak about this a lot, because I did speak about it while we were speaking about Aries. We cannot ignore Libra, but this is about growing relationship departments. It's going to be fundamental for your winning, basically. Also, it might be just that you are longing for a relationship. What are you going to be doing about it? It might be that you want to get married, and then, I don't know, my partner is not really thinking about it. So maybe I have to be initiating that. If you are single, yes, Jupiter can give you opportunity to find partners. Are they always the marriage materials? Not necessarily. But also it might be about taking your marriage to the next level, especially if you have got, for instance, Jupiter coming from your 5th house. Maybe the next step is that we're going to be, you know, having a child. Maybe Jupiter comes from your 4th, we're going to move together, and those type of things. Maybe it does bring in, you know, with Jupiter, there is always a sprinkling, never forget. So is my relationship not exciting anymore? And then we need to do something around it. Probably with Aries, it would be the sexual department, which might be struggling a little bit, especially if Mars is in the 11th or the 5th house. That could be the topic, or even the 2nd and the 8th. Then there might be some problems around there. So it's going to be important to work on it. It might be about that we don't socialize enough with other people. And I just want to be having fun more in the relationship, not just sitting all the time at home. So that could be kind of important to remember there too. Also, from a business perspective, this could really, really talk about things such as increasing your clientele. In what ways you're going to do that? How are you going to initiate that? What type of marketing tricks you're going to be actually implementing? That's going to be actually important to remember also. Yes. And because Chiron is there, in what ways your partner is causing you any type of pain, and how are we going to overcome those pain, or those pains? That's another topic. And it might be that you just figure out that you and your business partner is not necessarily on the same wavelength anymore. And that could be a major topic also. Now, Libra rising sign, I did not put that down for you, but let me just put that down. Jupiter rules your 6th house and also rules your, where are we? Libra 3rd house. So this really talks about coming up with some ideas when it comes to growing your business potentials, but this is also publicity. 3rd and the 7th house combo is really about publicity. And the 6th house comes into the picture because you're going to have to allow kind of yourself to get rid of any of the unhealthy attachments to self-worth matters. So don't become a people pleaser. Claim your right, Jupiter, to be paid attention to be loved by your partner. And that could be a topic here to watch out for. Scorpio, Jupiter is going through your 6th house, which is about health, routines, work environment, daily investments you do. And I'm not talking about like stock market, but kind of like how you organize your daily life. Also, in what ways you want to be in service to others, and whether you have got pets or not. So Jupiter here is really about being in service to a higher cause. In what way you want to kind of do that? It might be actually children related. I want to participate in a children's charity. I want to help small businesses to thrive. Maybe it's about, you know what, let's share each other's social media channels so that we small businesses can go further. This is the house of employment and unemployment ratio too. So it could indicate that unfortunately there are loads of Scorpios out there who might be unemployed, and then they're going to be looking for a job. So are you ready to learn maybe new fields, getting out of your comfort zone? Remember, South Node is in your 1st house too. So there is an element of a releasing work-related matters, especially those who have got their Mars in the 10th or the 4th house, or even 11th house. That could be a topic for you in the next 1 year. It might be about actually that you're going to have so many duties going on, a lot more work than before, and you're going to need an assistant. You're going to need someone who is kind of going to clean up your house and all those type of things. With the 6th house, I like mentioning the importance of balancing out private life with work duties. because 6 is the second from the 5th, so money made from fun activities, which kind of indicates that I only make money if I also spend some time with my loved ones or with fun as well. So there needs to be an element of a balance here. Don't just work 70 hours a week. You're going to burn out and you're not going to be productive enough or proactive enough. So having a little bit of a fun is just important so that you can be prompted for new ideas. It might be that you're going to have to fix loads of things around your house, okay? Or there might be plenty of road work going on around you, or things are breaking down, and then kind of could be a struggle to find the right engineer. Or it could talk about things where you just want to have a pet. Sometimes it does talk about ways to boost your energy level as well, which can be sometimes a little bit low. Jupiter's not necessarily the greatest position to have in the 6th house, to be frank. But it's kind of like, imagine that a guardian angel is sitting on your shoulder. Sometimes it talks about, for instance, me wanting to lose weight or going to the gym, and therefore I'm going to be protected by guardian angels and I'm not going to get sick. And I think boosting your self-worth is going to be important for you, because you do have got Jupiter ruling your 2nd house. So, and ruling your 5th house, so that fun element also comes into the picture, which could talk about making money of providing a service to others. Maybe it's a cleaning company. Maybe I'm going to be cooking for others, depending on where Jupiter comes from. Or maybe it's about making money from animal or health industry. Maybe you have been suffering with some health issues, and it might have been very costly, because Scorpio rising is a money sign, right? And then Jupiter might be asking you to look at alternative healing methods here. Are you fighting with weight problems? Jupiter rules your 2nd. Really watch out for your weight. Scorpio typically increases their weight because they are going through a crisis situation in their life and they can't really handle that. And also this could talk about financially supporting others, and you are being taken advantage of. So something to be kind of mindful about. Hopefully this brings a financial increase for your own child too. Sagittarius rising, Jupiter is in your 5th house, ruling your 1st and 4th. So obviously it's going to be triggering you quite significantly, trining your rising sign. It could be great time. Now, it's about turning your professions into, turning your hobby into a profession. It might be about that you've forgotten about your hobbies and it's time to actually go back and have fun a little bit. It might be that you have been single for a while. For a Sagittarius rising sign, it's not always a shock because they protect their freedom. It doesn't mean that they are least likely getting into a relationship, but it takes them a little bit of a time. And it could really talk about, you know what, I want to be dating and I'm going to be a serial dater, and I'm going to be, you know, going on a date 3 times a week, and then I'm going to be choosing the best possible person for myself. Typically, I usually say that Jupiter in your 5th house, it's a nice position, but I typically find that people tend to be finding or meeting kind of a little bit shady guys. So it takes a little bit longer to date the right person. Watch out for one-night stands, easy to get pregnant, or if you want to have a child with your partner, this could be a great period of time because Jupiter rules you, and Jupiter in the 5th is very much about self-expression. It's kind of like the creative self is coming out, so it could be a great period to promote also your employment, your self-employment, your creative projects to kind of build something up. Make yourself seen, make yourself available so that people actually can talk to you. It's about attending parties, going to the theater and so forth, so that I give chances to others to see me. You know, by having fun, you also make yourself available and you get exposed somehow, so you can be spreading the news about whatever you want to be doing, basically. You might have had issues with your own child. So this could bring a little bit of a healing here. Because remember, Chiron is also sitting here, right? So issues with the child, maybe the grades are dropping, maybe, you know, a little bit of a personal kind of, the behavior of the child is not necessarily great. And then how are we going to be kind of finding solutions for that? Jupiter wants you to look at different ways. This is the house of taking risks. So are you willing to take risks? Because there is no gain without pain. And that's the bestest proverb ever for this Jupiter-Chiron conjunction in the 5th house. It might be talking about that you want to be renting out a property, buying a property, selling a property, renovating a property and spending money on it. You might want to be having a fireplace. You might want to be doing something with the heating system. Maybe you want a solar panel, but some work around the home environment could be a topic. Capricorn rising, Jupiter will be in your 4th house, which is about roots, family, ancestry line, and end of things. So now this is definitely an interesting stuff. Now, because Aries is about beginnings and the 4th house is about endings. So plenty of Capricorn needs to end something in their life and start something fresh instead. And what is Capricorn motivated the most? Job. So even though Jupiter is in your 4th, I think it's going to be affecting quite a lot your career. Okay, so that's one thing. But ask yourself, what do you need to end in your life? What do you need to bury, in a sense, which I don't need anymore? And Capricorn, that's true for you because you tend to be full of fears overall, full of blockages. Capricorn's motto is that I don't want to be like my father. In many cases, I don't want to be repeating same familiar or family kind of patterns. So Jupiter kind of can talk about here that I'm going to be bold enough and I'm going to tell my parents I'm not coming for Christmas dinner, or we're not going to be making turkey on Christmas this year because I want to eat pork, okay, or whatever it is. But it's kind of like creating your own traditions as well to a certain extent. Yes, this could talk about health issues with the father, especially if Jupiter comes from the 9th or 4th or 3rd house natally. It might be that you become a lot more, you might become a lot more interested in your ancestry line, and then you're going to be doing a little bit more digging there, kind of like trying to hear some relationship within your family. You guys might not have been doing too great since about 2017, and Jupiter gives the ability to kind of like stop fighting, but actually focusing on those relationships a little bit more, or it can magnify the fights further down or further up. I mean, it could talk about being a little bit more nostalgic. And Jupiter wants you to remember the good times rather than the bad ones, even though the family might be going through a crisis situation at the moment. It might be about wanting to invest into properties, or it might be actually that someone is going to get born into the family. So maybe my, I don't know, my sibling is going to get married, or me moving together with a partner, or my sister is going to be having a baby, and all those type of things. And then basically the family is growing. Maybe this birth would be a start of a healing journey in your family, or it might start a healing within yourself too. So that could be something to work with. And remember that there is Aries also in the 4th house. So, you know, family feuds are actually very likely. So yeah, claiming your own voice is important with Jupiter in Aries, but listening to others are just going to be as important. It might be that you're going to see some tensions between your parents, and you might be just the third party kind of observing it, but it kind of causes a little bit of a frustration within you. Aquarius rising. Jupiter will be in your third house, which is about ideas, siblings, relatives, neighbors, the way we communicate. So maybe we are a little bit more on the feisty side when we are saying things to others. We might be having a little bit of an argument with our siblings. We might be having plenty of ideas, and we should be actually writing those down. We might have been struggling with a loud neighbor for a long time, or maybe, I don't know, the neighbor is having drug dealing going on, and you know, it's annoying, it's frustrating. So, and dealing with those situations. But let's just focus on the idea for a second, because I think it's about coming up with the greatest ideas ever, and then doing marketing around it and promoting business. So whether I'm going to be sending them out newsletters, or I'm going to pick up do a subscription plan, or I'm going to be hiring a marketing guru, a PR guru, or someone who is very good at technological advancements, like an IT guy. Maybe those are actually beneficial. This could really talk about that you're going to be reading a lot more, or taking short-term courses so that you boost your knowledge. It could talk about exchanging ideas with others, which might be inspiring you. It might be about that your brain is going to be quite restless. So I think there is a need here to kind of learn to rest and slow down sometimes. It might be that you want to be learning a language, for instance. Maybe it's a programming language for Aquarius, the language of the computer, right? Third and Aquarius rising. Maybe sometimes it talks about, I don't feel educated enough, so I need to be learning a little bit more, or I want to be finishing university matters. Maybe with Jupiter in Aries, sometimes the problem is that I start things and then I never finish them, because I've got so many ideas that we jump and we become scattered. So Aquarius, you are a fixed sign. So it's important that you're gonna kind of ground yourself when it comes to your ideas, and then you're gonna learn to prioritize. And Jupiter rules your second and your 11th house. So money made from your ideas, okay? And also money made from internet matters. So maybe this is the year when you should be promoting your social media channels, online businesses. Do I have an online presence? That could be a topic here. And last but not least, Pisces rising. So I'm talking about my rising sign too. So Jupiter is transiting our second house, which is about food, self-worth, finances, and also your values. So it really could talk about increasing your income and in what ways you're going to do that. And maybe with Jupiter, it's about teaching, it's about traveling, it's about connecting with foreigners more. It's about being proactive enough when it comes to chasing money. You know, not just again dreaming about it, but I'm going to take action, and I'm going to kind of have a program for it. I'm going to have a strategy, Aries. It does want you to look at your spending habits. It does want you to look at your approach to financials. So let me just point something out here. Your main the sign on the cusp of the second is always talking about in what ways you make money. No, sorry, no. Your approach to money. The ruler of the second house talks about the psychological motives of making money. And I tend to believe that the triplicity rulers are talking about where the money is coming from in certain stages of your life. Of course, the planet here, second house ruler, can also show that. But I would like you to look at your triplicity rulers as well. And I would like you to look at a little bit more of how Jupiter is actually triggering those planets. I made recently a webinar about triplicity rulers, which is under the Essential Dignity webinar. It's 5 hours. You might want to be looking at, because not every single stage is ruled by the same planet. But anyway, so are you a spender? Because what happens is with Aries, the money is burning in our hand. Unless your Mars is in a fixed sign or in a financial sign, because that's going to be helping you quite a lot. Well, guess what? My Mars is in Pisces, so I've never been good with keeping money around, to be frank. And therefore, this year, I need to learn with Jupiter in the second to kind of have a little bit of a limit. And that's very important with Jupiter, to kind of limit it sometimes. But also, what are your values? Do you know your own self-worth? Do you know that you are worthy for something? Do you know that you don't have to be lowering your standards, because maybe there is a little bit of a people pleaser side to Pisces also. Its secondary ruler is Venus. So unfortunately, Pisces wants to be loved. Therefore, they tend to be doing quite a lot for others overall. It might be that you have been struggling financially and you didn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So how are you going to initiate new ways of making money? Jupiter rules your 10th and 10th and first house. So this could really talk about start of a new job. It could talk about the growth of your body. So you should be putting a stop to your food intake. Maybe you want to do a little bit of a calorie count. With Jupiter in the second is one of the best is calorie count, because the counterpart is Saturn. So imagine what would Saturn do in your second, where Saturn comes from, because that could be one of the greatest diet for you. Yes. And also it could really talk about the ways you burn calorie to kind of find a solution for that. Also, this might be about that you staying in the background, like Pisces has got the kind of like the tendency to do. And I'm kind of like shying away from that public image. So how can I actually kind of overcome those issues? And that could be a topic. So, guys, we got to the end of it. A good 3 hours overall. So I'm just wondering if we have got any questions around Jupiter in Aries or any notes. Hands up, maybe those are easier rather than just typing in. Stephanie?
Hi, Victor. Could you go back to the slide where you posted about the Mundane astrology regarding Jupiter and Aries?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
Oh, sorry. Here.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Victor, and thanks for your time.
Oh, by the way, if anyone wants the slides, I can send them out. You just need to drop me an email and then I'm gonna send it out. So it's, and also it should be uploaded to the website where you registered. So I think my IT guy is gonna kind of upload that up there. So it should be on your profile as well. So slides are available for you. Great. Any other questions at all before we kind of close this chapter? I spoke about Jupiter return at the beginning of the lecture, so you might want to listen back to it. You just need to erect a Jupiter return chart and then look at how it looks like in your chart. So I spoke about that already a little bit. Okay, so as far as I can see, guys, I don't see any type of question. So thank you, everyone. I will upload the video as well on YouTube. If someone wants to get the slides, email me or just go on your profile on my website and it will be available in a couple of days. So don't expect immediately. And see you soon next month with another free webinar. I think it's going to be about Jupiter and Pluto cycle, but I will check if there is any very significant event, or you can even leave me some feedback and what topics you want me kind of hold a presentation about. Of course, something which is going on in the sky at the moment. So thank you, everyone. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.